Hi guys, if you're new here, my name is Sam and I make videos about makeup, chronic illness, and whatever I want. And today I want to talk a little bit about the gluten challenge. I just finished up my gluten challenge and had my celiac testing. I just want to talk about my experience in case it is something that your doctor has suggested to you, something you've been looking into on your own, or you've just been following my health journey recently and you're kind of curious like what has been up, because I didn't go into great detail during the whole thing because I was so sick. So the gluten challenge is mostly for people who have already cut out gluten, who need to have celiac testing done, or it's for people who aren't eating a lot of gluten in general, because to have the celiac testing you have to have consumed like a minimum amount for so long. So what that is suggested of about 4 slices of bread or the equivalent every day for 6 to 8 weeks. Unfortunately, there were some things that happened and I ended up having to do that for 10 weeks and 1 day, which was absolute torture. Now, some of you might be wondering, and I got this question a lot from people in my personal life, and to be fair, kind of asked this question myself, what's the point? Like, what's the point of doing this challenge, doing this testing if you know that gluten makes you so sick already? And I don't really have an answer for that for myself, but some people just really want to know what their health problem is. Some people live in a country where you can be reimbursed for gluten-free foods or get a stipend to buy gluten-free foods. That is not the case in the United States, but it is the case in a lot of other countries. So it would be helpful to know that you do have celiac. Some people just want to know for sure. I was kind of in that. I want to know for sure, even though I'm already 99% sure that it's celiac. There is a margin of error with the test. The biopsy is the gold standard, but it isn't 100%. Like any medical test, and every human body is a little different and it won't show things exactly the same. So you really need to make this decision on your own with your doctor based on what works best for you. This whole video is just going to be my experience and my opinion on what I did or wish I did do. So now I'm going to just go into like the first couple of days. I'm not going to go every day. I stopped keeping track of like what I was eating specifically and what symptoms were happening, because after a while it just became redundant. So let's just start at the beginning. So the first day I was quite nervous. I know how I reacted to gluten, but not having it in so long, I was kind of unsure about how severe the reaction would be going back. So I was quite nervous that I was just going to immediately get very sick. So I started with a snack of a few pretzels, a few crackers, and just kind of wanted to see what my body did. Within about a half an hour, I was severely bloated. I had a lot of stomach gurgling and stomach pain, but that was it for that little meal. Now for my first actual meal, that was the same day, because again, you have to eat a minimum of, 4 pieces of bread, more or less. I had some chicken nuggets from McDonald's. About 4 hours after that, I had intense stomach pain, bloating, I was wheezing, and I was coughing. My respiratory therapist warned me ahead of time that because asthma is an inflammatory disease, that eating a food that is inflammatory for me, gluten isn't inflammatory for everyone. Just sidebar, don't fall for that weird diet culture thing. For some people, gluten is inflammatory, for others it isn't. It is for me, and that impacted my asthma throughout this entire challenge. That first night, I slept terribly. I slept the worst I slept in a very long time, tossing and turning. I had muscle pain, I had joint pain, I could not get comfortable. I wrote this before, I would say a week before I stopped eating gluten. I'm back off gluten. I've already had my testing, and we'll briefly talk about that at the end, but I will be doing a separate video on the testing. Day by day, new symptoms started to show up, and some of the ones I already had continued to get worse. I also noticed that my symptoms were dependent on like the kind of gluten that I was eating. So an example I wrote down was I ate gluten for all 3 meals one day, and I thought I was actually going to have to go to the hospital. I was so sick. I was in so much pain. It was horrific. So I stopped doing that and only ate like my serving and didn't eat any extra. Pizza was like my worst food, I would say. It was worse than a sandwich. It was worse than crackers. So that when I would eat that, I knew that I was going to have a really bad time for a few days. This to me explains why my symptoms were all over the place before I went gluten-free, because, you know, some days they were so severe I couldn't get out of bed, and then other days they were just kind of like bad, but I could function, and it was really dependent on what I was eating. Now, let's get into my symptoms, seeing as I'm talking about this. These are in no particular order, but it's a list here. So we have bloating, stomach pain, diarrhea, constipation, yes, both, wheezing, coughing, joint pain, muscle pain, swelling in my hands and feet, headaches and migraine attacks, separate, they're not the same thing, lymph node pain under my arm, lymph node pain in my jaw, muscle stiffness to the point that I couldn't twist or bend without being in excruciating pain, twitching, tingling, buzzing in my legs, specifically my left leg, tremors, a gnawing stomach pain, inability to feel full, but also no appetite, stuffy nose, shortness of breath, nausea, dry heaving, fever symptoms, endometriosis, flare, pain, regular numbness in my leg, daily ringing in the ears, dryness everywhere from the top down, skin, mouth, everything. Random rashes that were both itchy and raised. My KP got worse. My acne is really bad. I was getting body acne. My anxiety and depression were flaring up. It was a rough 10 weeks, let me just say. It was brutal. At the point I wrote this, I had intestinal paralysis. It wasn't gastric paralysis. My stomach and my gastric chamber were emptying, but my small intestine wasn't moving things through, and it was even struggling with laxatives. I couldn't really force it all out. I had next to no appetite for 3 weeks. I would have to force my daily amount of gluten in, and that's all I would eat for the entire day, because it was such severe pain when I would eat that I just couldn't. Every day I felt myself like getting weaker. I was living off of protein shakes. Shout out to Premier Protein for helping me through this. Not sponsored, but fantastic brand. Helped me survive. I could really feel the malabsorption and the malnutrition from barely eating kicking in towards the end, and it was really a really big struggle for me. I am still not back to normal. That's going to take months, but I am feeling better just being a few days gluten-free. The beginning of the experience was actually fun, because you have this whole list of, oh, I can have all these foods one more time that I haven't had in 2 years, blah, blah, blah. I would say after about 3 weeks it stopped being fun. And then after the specific time, so when I hit that 6-week time frame where I should have been cutting it off, I just didn't want to eat at all. I stopped. I didn't even get all the way through my list of things I wanted to have one last time, because I just hated the thought of eating food, because I knew I was going to be horrifically sick. Now, to circle back onto what I was saying, people asking, why did I go through the test, or why didn't I quit when I got really sick? And I don't have a good answer for that for me. For everyone, it's going to be different. I'm just going to speak from my experience, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving any advice here. But if I knew what I knew now, having talked to the surgeon who did my testing, my primary care, everyone else, I would personally not have done this. No matter how the testing comes back, like the biopsy comes back, I have to live as if I have celiac either way, because I get so horrifically sick that to me, the definitive answer doesn't really matter. I needed to go through with the endoscopy and the colonoscopy to check for bleeds or any other disease that could explain my anemia and inability to absorb other vitamins. But having the specific diagnosis doesn't change how I'm going to have to eat and function in my day-to-day life. I know I'm going to have to be more strict, so in that regard, to me, it doesn't really matter. Now, in most instances, people would have these tests before they stop eating gluten, and the gluten challenge wouldn't even be an issue. And I recommend if you're in that situation and you're having any of these symptoms and you think it could be an issue with gluten, please stress for the biopsy and the blood tests and things before you stop eating gluten. And you won't be in the position I am. Unfortunately, a lot of things that shouldn't have happened, and that's how I ended up in this position. But it isn't the case for most individuals. You usually catch it before you go gluten-free. The entire experience overall has me and everyone close to me realizing just how serious not just celiac, but non-celiac gluten sensitivity can be. They completely wreak havoc on your entire body. The only silver lining here for me is I have that list of exactly what symptoms are related to gluten and what aren't. When I went gluten-free the first time, I was just kind of like taking a shot in the dark of this kind of disappeared. Is it a coincidence? Is it related to being gluten-free? And now I know for sure. I also have had this testing and I know I don't have any intestinal bleeds. Everything is really good in there. I have some mild gastritis, which my acid reflux got horrific eating the gluten, so I assume that's related. The doctor also assumes that is related. So I'm glad that they're no longer mystery symptoms and I can attribute them to something specific. That was worth it to me. I don't know if it was worth it an entire 10 weeks, but it was worth 6. I do have months of recovery, about 3 to 6 months for my gut to fully heal, which sounds like a long time, but I feel a little better every day. I'm noticing some symptoms decrease day by day. I was actually surprised on how quick some of them started to resolve. Like some of my joint and muscle pain has decreased significantly, which I'm thrilled about. I'm sleeping much better and my bloating has decreased. I still have kind of a constant stomach ache, but I figured that will be one of the last symptoms to go away. Now, to touch on the testing real quick, I had to have both a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. Colonoscopy prep wasn't fun. Like I said, I'm going to make a separate video on the in-depths about the test in case anyone needs them for whatever reason and is nervous. I'm just going to talk about my experience. It was like everything you'll read, less bad and less scary than what you think about up front, but we did rule out intestinal bleeds for my anemia, which was nice. I didn't have any polyps. I didn't have anything else happening to explain anything. They took biopsies of my stomach and esophagus for the gastritis to make sure it wasn't H. pylori, and they of course did the celiac biopsies. I don't know when those will come back, but the surgeon told me to stop eating gluten. Everyone has told me to stop eating gluten in all forms. That was stressed, not just wheat, all gluten. So pretty confident on the results here. And like I had mentioned, either way, I have to move forward with living this way. Anyway, I'll be making some more videos about celiac disease, about the other things I've had to do. Like I had to replace a lot of things in my kitchen, stuff like that. This video specifically was just talking about why I have been mildly absent for the last 2 months, and I am back and I'm feeling better. Thank you all for your support. If you've been in the community tab, I've kept little updates there. If you have any questions about the gluten challenge, let me know down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I hope to get back to regular content. And I will see you guys next time.